Hey guys, so Raynor is one of the starting heroes that a lot of people recommend you start playing if you're getting into Assassins. He tends to be a rather easy hero to at least be impactful on, making him a great hero to start with for beginners. And I've got this series, 4 mistakes that you might be making on heroes, and I want to talk a little bit about Raynor, as these are some interesting ones. I mean, of course, there's going to be the basic things like you shouldn't be using your Q to knock away someone that you're about to kill, because then it's going to make it harder for you to kill them. But there are some other ones that are a little bit less known that you may want to mess around with. And for new players in particularly, I feel it's really important to talk about stutter stepping. In particular, I see so many people who will walk up and they'll right click on an enemy and they'll just attack him like this. But when the enemy starts running away, do you see how my character waits to use his animation and then goes to chase him? And whenever he's doing that, I'm missing out on, look how many shots I'm missing out on. Now, my Raider is doing a lot of damage, but did you see how there were so many times where my character was spent so much of that time running that he was missing out on a lot of damage? Well, there's another way to do this, and I want to share that. I'm actually going to reset talents so I don't have the ultimate there. And I want to show you an easier way to do this, which is stutter stepping in the direction that the enemies are going. So in this case, if this guy starts trying to run away, I'm shooting him, and I'm not missing any amount of DPS because I'm moving in a direction that he needs to go. Now, if he tries to get out, he's dead. My character's no longer trying to catch up to him and is instead going alongside him. So if you ever are in a situation where you know you're winning, and say the enemy's escape is up here, instead of shooting him at max range right here, say this guy's trying to run away and his escape's up there, instead of shooting him at max range and waiting for your character to catch up to him, what you should be instead doing is before you fire the first shot, get a little bit closer, and then start shooting and moving towards the direction that he's trying to go. And if you start seeing enemies show up, then you start stutter stepping and going back away, closer to your team. And this is just how you should be handling it. And not just that, but when you get into team fights, you want to stutter step just so that it's harder for them to land abilities on you. Say there's a Murden that you're shooting at. This is a lot harder to land abilities on than if he just fires off a Q while you're standing still like this. He just walks up, uses a Q on you, and then you're stunned and you're dead. But if you're constantly moving like this, he might not know if you're going to move up or down, and he might fire off the Q behind you, and then you get to dodge a Q. So there's a lot more situations where you can actually get it. So number one mistake that I see on Raynors is you're not stutter stepping, and you're shooting people at max range like this. When if you ever expect the fight to go heavily in your favor, you should start shooting them when you're a little bit closer. And then you should stutter step in the direction that you think they might be going, pop your heal, and just start melting them down. And same thing, if they're running in the direction you need to go, keep stutter stepping. Make sure that you're never at a point where they can just walk past you. So that's really how you should be handling it. Always be repositioning in team fights, and that's something you can definitely practice. I give people a challenge a lot of times where I have them shoot at something and then watch what the DPS comes out to be, which on Raynor should be around maybe 280, I think. A little bit less than that. Yeah, it's about 280. Then I tell people to shoot this minion and then stay as close as you can to that DPS on this without taking any damage. And this will get you used to the whole idea of stutter stepping. And there are other ways to stutter step. For example, you can use A, but A sometimes might shoot something that you don't want it to shoot. As you can see, I'm Aing minions, or I'm Aing closer to the enemy, and yet I'm shooting the creeps. So A doesn't always work perfectly, which is why I recommend people just practice the right click method instead. It just generally is more reliable, and then you just try to get your DPS as close as you can, because at the end of the day, even if you get it to like 70 or 80% of your normal DPS, then that's going to be a lot higher than you standing still and missing shots because you're getting hit by CCs and enemies are running away from you. So that's something that I want you to practice, something that's really good. Now I want to talk about his burst and stacking. So there are times where you want to go all of the level 1 talents, but let's say, for example, you're getting Veteran Marksman. Veteran Marksman makes it to where every time that your trait hits, which is these 3 little bullets that are right here, every time that you're about to fire off your 3rd shot, which is when you're glowing blue, you're going to get a stack, and that's going to increase your crit damage, right? So what happens a lot of times that I see this happen way too much is people will fire off their 3 shots on minions, and they'll get to that third one, and they'll like charge up to the enemy to go get their shot. Which is okay, except for the higher rank you get, right as you start glowing blue, the enemies are going to run away from you. And that's why I recommend people do 2 shots and then do this burst combo that I'm talking about. And you'll be much better at trading with the enemies. So the burst combo looks like this. You fire 2 shots, and then you do an instant shot, and then you do your Q to knock them away. So I'll show you a little bit one more time of how it should be done correctly. And what it's doing is when you cast Inspire, you reset your basic attack cooldown. So you're actually getting, you get a shot, and then watch. You get a shot, double shot Q to knock them away. You kind of see how that's working. So we get up to 2 shots. We reset, we fire off the 3rd shot, which gets us glowing blue, but we immediately fire off a 4th shot, which with Inspire, which makes it to where we will get that crit damage off. And then we knock them away so they can't re-engage on us after we've got our crit. Now, we don't need to knock them away. If we're winning in this fight, getting that Inspire, you get that extra attack speed and movement speed, you could play really aggressive. So say, for instance, you're fighting against someone, they step up, and you go with a auto attack W, reset it, and then you just start attacking them with the bonus attack speed. Bonus attack speed ends, you could walk away if you want to. But just talking about the burst that's possible in this build is pretty cool. Because if you look at it, say we're looking at Anduin. Anduin is 2,600 health, right? So if I walked up to him and I just did this combo where I hit, look at how much damage I just did to him. About 40 to 50% of his health before he got that heal off. It's not bad, and you can also follow up with a couple extra shots too before you fire off your Q if you want to. So for example, we could go like this, hit, 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 and then throw off a Q, and just be a lot scarier in general, and again, continue stutter stepping. So managing that burst combo is going to make it a lot easier to get your stacks if you do pick any of the stack talents. I'll go over a build at the end of this video, though. Wave clearing is a common mistake, but something, let me remove the enemy hero really quick. And it's just something that can be done rather easily if you're paying attention. So the ultimate prime way to wave clear on Raynor is to essentially use your Q down the line, and then to take a step back, and as they clump up, you spread out your damage, and then when you get your crit, you try to crit and hit as many targets as possible. And then you can mount up as the minions are dying, and you can actually double soak lanes if you want to. If the minions have already settled in the lane, then you reposition to the side of the minions, and you'll fire off a Q that's going to hit through it's all but 2 of the minions. Best case scenario, you can do all but 1 of the minions. So for example, right here, you're going to reposition to like this side, and you're going to aim through all of these minions, fire it off, and then while these are clumped, same thing. You're going to get your shots together, and then get your crits to hit as many of them as possible. One more time, crit, and then you mount up as that last minion's dying, and you can still be double soaking. So let's get on to picking your ultimate abilities. There are 2 ultimate abilities on Raynor, and both of these ultimate abilities are very, very strong. If you need single target damage, or if your team's only sustained damage, Raynor's Raider is extremely powerful for doing a ton of damage per second. So we saw that his damage per second was around 280. If you pick up Raynor's Raider and you start hitting him without using your W, you're immediately jumping your DPS to about 300 to 400. And at 300 to 400 DPS, you kill a tank in under 10 seconds. And that's without using any of your other abilities. So that's a pretty solid amount of DPS that you can do and really melt down tanks at level 10. Enemy assassins you can drop in about 5 seconds. A little bit less if you're using abilities. Very, very powerful, especially if you need to race at all on any maps like that. Hyperion, on the other hand, is if you have other sustained damage in your team and you just need to get the maximum amount of damage off during team fights, specifically on maps that team fights are extremely important in short periods of time, like Sky Temple or Infernal Shrines, where you need to be fighting or else you're going to lose the objective. Tossing a Hyperion on the objective can win you guys team fights, and it can be brutal. Not to mention on both of those maps, at least on Infernal Shrines, if you end up winning the objective without needing it, then you start pushing with it. It's a great sieging tool that can do a lot of damage while the enemies are trying to defend and to their structures. But for the sake of this, we're going to be talking mostly about Raynor's Raiders, which brings it into the 4th mistake, which is utilizing Raynor's Raiders. The first big mistake that I see is people don't use the radar to check for vision. It can give vision in a pretty decent radius and can tell you if the enemies are in there. For example, instead of face checking this bush, you could send in the radar and you can have the radar check the bush for you. It checks the bush, realizes that there's nobody in there, and then you're safe because you're not actually dying. It might just be a radar that's dying. The next thing is managing your radar just so that it doesn't die. It naturally will attack whatever you're attacking, and that makes it pretty useful for that, but you can see as I'm stutter stepping, it's just sitting there and attacking whatever target I'm shooting at. Just simply repositioning it in team fights every once in a while, usually to behind you. The easiest way, if you're not good at microing two different things at once, is just to send it out into like its leash range, which is over here, and then start firing again, because then when you start firing again, it can start coming back over to you as well. So just sending it out of the fight and then back into the fight every once in a while is a great way to get it into safe positions, and then just move it back in, and it's pretty easy. So just in between a couple shots, make sure that you're moving it. And finally, the last thing that I see that people don't utilize the radar enough for is when you're taking early camps at like level 10, you can use the radar to tank a few shots for you. So you can start off a camp like this, you can reposition and let the radar take a few shots, and then you just back it away before it dies, and you can start tanking the rest of this for it, and it's just going to heal up throughout the fight. You can do this for early bosses if your team doesn't want to have the tank do this. And then you can also, if you start getting low again, you can have the radar tank it once again. And if you want to, you could even switch off so that the radar isn't taking that much damage. So it's a great way to take camps after level 10 without taking a lot of damage. You see, I ended that camp off without really, I just used an adrenaline rush, and I was essentially ended the camp with full health and full mana. So utilizing the radar to tank for you for a couple shots is really nice, and it helps you to down camps very efficiently at the early levels, early to mid levels anyways. So those are the 4 to 5 basic mistakes that I commonly see on Raynor. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the builds that I like. I personally like Veteran Marksman. I'll use all 3 of his level 1s. Ace in the hole, if I see that my team's going to be constantly slowing or stunning things, then I'll be picking up Ace in the hole. But I actually do like Veteran Marksman for maps that tend to go a little long, or against heroes that I can get free stacks off of. People like Murden, people like Joanna, who are just constantly in there, or if you go in the solo lane versus someone like a Misha, where you can just constantly stack off of it the entire time. And so I really like this talent for the solo lane, and it's okay in certain situations, but in most cases I like Ace in the hole. It scales throughout the entire game, and it's just a very strong talent. Exterminator I pick on Battlefield of Eternity to race with, but outside of that I don't usually pick this talent. And even then, if we have decent race, sometimes I won't pick this talent. For level 4, I tend to take Fight or Flight. Lowers the cooldown a little bit on Adrenaline Rush, allows you to heal more often, and gives you a lot of armor. So in case someone really dives in on you, you can use that to heal yourself, survive burst, and then use your Q to get everyone out and then walk away. Level 7, Unstable Compound allows you to trigger your own Ace in the hole. So that just generally is a good talent. But if you are stacking, sometimes it's good to go with Fuel the Rush because you can increase the Adrenaline Rush's cooldown reduction from basic attacks by 200%, which is just kind of nice because you'll be essentially shaving off like 3 seconds or a second and a half every time you're autoing. So between the lowered cooldown here as well as the lowered cooldown here, you can be constantly healing yourself and staying in the fight longer and getting more and more crit off. Level 10s, I've already explained my reasoning on that. Level 13, I almost always go Giddy Up. You gain 8% more movement speed while mounted, and Inspire gains 8% more movement speed, so you go to 18% movement speed. You can really reposition around in fights and do a lot. Level 16, I generally get Paint Them Red. Allows me to do a lot of burst damage to targets and heal targets. This is usually my finisher for things, but you can also go for this talent as well. It helps you stack because you can pop this to instantly get a stack. So for example, with this talent, you could do the burst combo that I said, and then immediately after your first crit, you can get a second crit, and it gets to be a lot of burst damage if you do stack this up really well. You could essentially do like 80% of someone's health in a small burst. But Paint Them Red generally is still a pretty good one. And then at level 20, I generally get Execute. Just makes it to where the lower health they get is the more I'm doing, which is pretty cool. But at the same time, upgrading your ultimates can bring a lot as well. But I generally get execute. And that is pretty much my Raynor build. So I either go with Ace in the Hole and the combo to stick with it, and then the rest of the talents are about the same, or I go Veteran Marksman and then the 2 talents that affect my E. Hopefully that helps you guys out, answers some of the common mistakes on Raynor, and gives you guys something to practice if you're new to the game or new to Raynor and you just want to practice getting a little bit better at some of his different things. He's a very powerful hero. He's one of the heroes that has a pretty decent skill floor. A lot of people can get in and have a lot of impact, but he's still a hero that's being used in competitive today. So if you get really good at him, he's a great hero to play around with. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.